Some people say love conquers all, but my in-laws proved that prejudice can be stronger than family ties. Not that the Blackwoods ever really considered me or my son family, despite my 15-year marriage to their precious firstborn son James. I'm Catherine Blackwood, though I started life as Catherine Chen, daughter of Chinese immigrants who built a successful restaurant business in San Francisco. At 42, I found myself navigating life as a widow and single mother to my 12-year-old son William, who happens to be autistic. My husband James had been my strongest supporter, both in my career as an architectural preservationist and in advocating for William's needs. But a heart attack took him from us 2 years ago, leaving me to face his family's increasing hostility alone. The Blackwoods owned Evergreen Manor, one of the most prestigious wedding venues in New England. The historic mansion and its perfectly manicured gardens had hosted society weddings for 4 generations. My sister-in-law, Christine, was about to become the latest Blackwood to marry there, and that's when everything came to a head. About the wedding, Catherine, my mother-in-law Margaret cornered me after Sunday dinner, her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a crystal sherry glass. "We need to discuss William's involvement." I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when discussing the help or anyone else she considered beneath her. "What about it? He's excited about being part of his aunt's special day." Margaret's lips thinned. "That's just it. Christine wants a perfect society wedding. All the right people will be there. We can't have any disruptions." Disruptions? I kept my voice level, though my hands clenched in my lap. William's been doing wonderfully with his therapy. He's learned so many coping strategies. "Catherine, dear, be realistic," Margaret interrupted. "We all know William struggles with loud noises and crowds, and his behaviors, they're not appropriate for such an important event." "His behaviors?" I could hear my voice rising. "You mean his stimming? His occasional need for quiet breaks? These are part of who he is." "And that's fine," Margaret said in a tone that suggested it was anything but fine. "For family gatherings and such. But this is different. The governor's family will be there. The senator's daughter is a bridesmaid. We simply can't risk William having one of his episodes." I looked around for support, but found none. George, my father-in-law, was suddenly very interested in his paper. Even Christine, who used to spend hours playing video games with William, wouldn't meet my eyes. "James would never have allowed this," I said quietly. "James isn't here," Margaret replied, her voice sharp. "And the Blackwood reputation is more important than your grandson." "Got it." I stood up, my chair scraping against the antique hardwood floors Margaret was so proud of. "William and I won't be attending." "Don't be dramatic," Margaret sighed. "Of course you should come. William can stay with that nice special needs sitter you use sometimes." I left without another word, driving home through tears of rage and grief. William was waiting up, despite the late hour, working on his latest architectural model. My brilliant, beautiful boy who saw the world in such unique ways, who could tell you the history and design features of every major building in Boston, who'd inherited his father's gentle heart and my love of historical preservation. "Bad dinner?" he asked, noticing my expression. William might struggle with some social cues, but he'd always been tuned into my emotions. "Just grandma being grandma," I said, sitting beside him to examine his model. "A perfect miniature of Evergreen Manor. This is beautiful, sweetheart." "Thanks." I used the original blueprints from great-grandpa's study to get all the details right. His hands fluttered excitedly as he pointed out various features. "Did you know the east wing was added in 1892? And look at these supporting arches." I froze. "What blueprints from great-grandpa's study?" William looked puzzled. "The ones in the hidden room behind the library. I found them last month when I was exploring during Sunday dinner. There's all kinds of old documents in there." My heart started racing. James had once mentioned his grandfather's private study, a room that was sealed up after his death. Apparently, it wasn't as sealed as everyone thought. The next day, after dropping William at his specialized school program, I drove to Evergreen Manor. As the widow of the eldest son, I still had keys and security codes. The mansion was quiet, the wedding planning committee not due for hours. William's directions led me to the library, where he discovered a panel that opened into a small room that smelled of old paper and secrets. Dozens of filing cabinets lined the walls, each meticulously labeled. But it wasn't the architectural drawings that caught my eye. It was a thick folder marked Ownership Trust. Final version. My hands trembled as I read through the documents. Edward Blackwood, James's grandfather, had been quite thorough in his estate planning. The manor wasn't owned by the Blackwood family at all. It was held in a specialized trust with very specific conditions about family unity and care for all descendants. But there was more. A sealed envelope addressed to the future guardian of the manor contained a letter that shook me to my core. Edward had an autistic brother, hidden away from society due to the prejudices of his time. The grand ballroom where society brides now danced. It was originally designed as a sensory-friendly space for his brother, with special acoustic treatments and quiet nooks. The manor was built on love and acceptance, Edward wrote. Any Blackwood who forgets that dishonors its true purpose. As I read on, a plan began forming in my mind. Margaret's precious wedding venue business operated under a special historical site license, one that depended on adhering to the trust's original terms. Terms that I now held in my hands. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. Wedding planner needs final headcount, assuming William won't attend. I looked around the hidden study at the evidence of a legacy of love corrupted by prejudice and pretense. Time to restore this house to its true purpose, I whispered, thinking of my son's perfect architectural model, his deep connection to this place that should have been his heritage. Margaret had no idea what was coming. Evergreen Manor was at its most beautiful in the early morning light. I stood in the grand ballroom, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams streaming through the original acoustically designed windows. William was right. His great-grandfather had been an architectural genius, creating spaces that were both stunning and sensory-conscious. The wedding was 3 days away, and the mansion buzzed with activity. Florists, caterers, and event staff scurried around, all under Margaret's imperious supervision. She nearly dropped her designer clipboard when she saw me. "Catherine, what are you doing here? The family brunch isn't until Sunday." "We need to talk," I interrupted. "All of us. Now." Something in my voice must have convinced her because 15 minutes later, the Blackwood family gathered in the manor's conference room. Margaret, George, Christine, and her fiancé Thomas, even Aunt Eleanor, who'd flown in from Connecticut for the wedding. I placed my laptop and a thick folder of documents on the mahogany table. "Before we begin, I'd like to play something for you." The recording was from one of William's therapy sessions 6 months ago. In it, he described his connection to Evergreen Manor, his understanding of its architectural features, his love for the quiet corners and perfect acoustics his great-grandfather had built into the design. "Turn that off," Margaret snapped. "We're not here to discuss William's fixations." "Actually, we are." I opened the folder. "Because Edward Blackwood designed this manor specifically with people like William in mind. Would anyone like to hear about Uncle Robert?" The room went silent. Even George looked startled. "Who?" Christine asked. "Your great-uncle Robert, Edward's brother. The autistic brother this manor was originally built to accommodate." I began distributing copies of Edward's letter and the trust documents. "The brother your generation was never told about because Margaret decided that part of the family history was too embarrassing." Margaret's face went pale. "Where did you get those?" "From Edward's private study, the one you sealed up after his death. Turns out you can't keep secrets from an architecturally gifted 12-year-old who notices hidden doors." The next hour was a revelation for the family. I showed them Edward's original designs, his detailed notes about acoustic treatments and sensory-friendly spaces. The grand ballroom's famous perfect acoustics weren't for wedding music. They were designed to prevent overwhelming echoes that could trigger sensory overload. But the weddings, Christine protested weakly. "The business was never supposed to be the manor's primary purpose," I finished. "The trust is very clear. Evergreen Manor was meant to be a safe haven for all Blackwood descendants, with specific provisions for supporting those with special needs." I turned to my father-in-law. "George, did you know your father left control of the trust to his eldest son's heir, not to you or Margaret?" George shook his head slowly. "Dad always said there were conditions, but Margaret handled all the legal aspects after we married." "Because she buried the truth," I said quietly. "But here it is. As James's widow and William's mother, I control the trust. And the wedding venue business operates under a special historical site license that depends on adhering to the trust's original terms." Margaret stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. You wouldn't dare. Cancel the wedding business? No, but I am making changes. I laid out my terms clearly. First, William not only attends the wedding, but he helps redesign the event to be sensory-friendly. His great-grandfather's original designs prove it's possible to have both elegance and accessibility. The governor's family, Margaret began, will be impressed by our commitment to inclusive celebration spaces. I cut in. Second, going forward, Evergreen Manor will operate as both a wedding venue and a special needs-friendly event space. We'll offer sensory-friendly weddings, proms for special needs schools, events that honor Edward's original vision. Christine surprised everyone by speaking up. I think it's brilliant. Thomas and I would be honored to have the first sensory-friendly society wedding. Right, honey? Thomas, whose younger sister I remembered was on the autism spectrum, nodded enthusiastically. My family would love it, and it would make incredible press. Historic venue returns to its inclusive roots. One by one, family members began to see the potential. George looked relieved, as if a weight he carried for years was lifting. Even Aunt Eleanor shared stories about Uncle Robert that she'd heard from her mother. Margaret alone remained opposed, but her power was broken. When she threatened to contest the trust, I simply played another recording. Edward Blackwood himself, talking about his brother and his hopes for the manor's future. I leave this trust in the hands of my eldest son's heir. His voice crackled through time, knowing they will understand that true nobility lies not in excluding those who are different, but in creating spaces where all can thrive. The wedding was transformed. William worked with the planners, explaining how to adjust lighting and sound levels while maintaining the elegant atmosphere. His intimate knowledge of the manor's architecture proved invaluable. The governor's wife, whose nephew was autistic, became an enthusiastic supporter of our inclusive vision. Margaret, of course, was horrified when William stemmed during the ceremony, until the governor's wife commented on how wonderful it was to see a family embracing neurodiversity so openly. After that, she limited herself to tight smiles and stiff acceptance. The changes to Evergreen Manor went far beyond one wedding. We launched a series of sensory-friendly events, partnering with special needs organizations throughout New England. The manor's unique architectural features, designed by Edward for his brother, became a selling point instead of a secret. William flourished in his new role as the manor's unofficial architectural historian. His detailed models and knowledge of the building's features impressed everyone who visited. Even Margaret, after seeing him confidently lead a tour for a historical preservation society, had to admit he brought something special to the family business. Last month, during a quiet moment in Edward's study, I found another letter, this one addressed specifically to William. To my future architect, it began. If you're reading this, you've discovered what I always knew, that different minds see beauty others miss. This house is your heritage, not because of your name, but because you understand its heart. William keeps the letter framed in his room, next to his latest architectural model. A design for a modern sensory-friendly event space inspired by his great-grandfather's work. Margaret still struggles with our new direction, but the success is undeniable. Evergreen Manor has become known as New England's premier venue for inclusive events. Our waiting list is longer than ever, and several other historic venues have consulted us about sensory-friendly renovations. Yesterday, I watched William showing a group of autistic teenagers the manor's hidden acoustic features. His hands danced with excitement as he explained the engineering principles, his audience completely engaged. In that moment, I saw Edward's vision fully realized, a space where difference isn't just accommodated, but celebrated. The portrait gallery has been updated. Alongside the stern-faced Blackwoods of the past, there's now a photo of Edward and Robert as young men, standing in front of the newly built manor. Beside it hangs a picture of William at the sensory-friendly wedding, hands fluttering joyfully as he explains the ballroom's design to fascinated guests. Below both photos, there's a quote from Edward's letter. True legacy lives not in maintaining appearances, but in creating spaces where love accepts all forms of being. James would have loved that. Sometimes, when the manor is quiet and the evening light filters through those perfectly designed windows, I swear I can feel the presence of both brothers, Edward and Robert, watching over their creation. Their dream of a house built on understanding and acceptance lives on, not just in the architecture, but in every inclusive event we host, every barrier we break down, every mind we open to the beauty of difference. And William, my beautiful boy who saw through walls to find the truth, continues to build on their foundation, creating spaces where everyone belongs, just as his great-grandfather always intended.